Okay, so the question I posed was, what comes to mind when you hear the phrase positive psychology?
Focus on what's going well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so focus on what's going well. Thanks, Michelle.
Focusing on strength, character, quality. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so understanding the character. Yeah. Thanks, Carmine. Any other thoughts in the space?
Exploring multiple perspectives, sort of flipping sort of things like limiting beliefs and such like.
Okay, so kind of so having a look at what those limiting beliefs might be and flipping the perspective. And so all of those things and more. Positive psychology was founded not necessarily founded because it came after lots of work that went before, but the term, if you like, was coined in 1998. Martin Seligman is the father of positive psychology, but it wasn't just him alone. And basically what he realized was that at the time, psychology was really, really focused on what was wrong. Okay. What was wrong with humans, what we needed to do to fix that. And when we, thought about what was wrong and what it took to fix it, generally what psychology was focused on was how to get people from minus side of the spectrum to zero. Okay. So what's wrong with you? So things like pathology, illness, neurosis. How do we get people, and Seligman often refers to it as he worked with people who are really miserable and help them become a little bit less miserable. But there was very little research or kind of work that went into figuring out what made happy people happy. So positive psychology then is the science of well-being. What it sought to do and still does is to kind of research what makes life worth living. Okay, what makes life worth living? It focuses on life satisfaction, meaning, engagement, or flow in life, and asks the question, what is it that's right? And when we're in this phase here, so around kind of 0, 1, that's what's known as languishing. Okay, it's what's known as languishing. So we're not terrible. We're not we don't have kind of depression or very bad anxiety or anything clinical, let's say, but we're not really thriving or flourishing in life. And very often you might find that some of your clients might come to you in this kind of phase where they're just a little bit off the boil. Nothing clinical is really happening, but yet they don't feel that they're kind of gaining a lot of meaning from life. So as I said, positive psychology sought then to get people from 0, often referred to as normal people for want of a better expression, but normal, kind of the normal population. How do we get them from 0 to plus 1 to 10? Just want to pause there and hear any thoughts, reflections, questions at this point. Okay.
Sorry, is there a question around 0 being normal or is actually 10 normal? I don't know, being positive about life. It was interesting to hear that the normal means, is it natural to be fluctuating between the two? I don't know, it's just a question that popped up in my head.
Yeah, great question, Joel. And again, I use the term normal really loosely and with reluctance. I'm not really very fond of that phrase, but I think what it meant was the average person in the population who's not kind of suffering in a clinical way. But absolutely, it's so subjective. What is normal from 0 to 10? And how do we even measure that? And that's what the science did seek to do, is, what makes life worth living? What is happy? Where should we be in that scale? But I think it's also important to note that positive psychology is not just about positive thinking. It's not law of attraction. It doesn't suggest that we should be happy all of the time and have this kind of Pollyanna syndrome where we go around pretending everything about the world is wonderful, because that just isn't what life is. And every human walking the earth will know that life is, it might not be exactly 50-50, but life has ups and downs. As joyous and wonderful as it can be, it can also be really tough. And positive psychology recognizes that. So, you know, Martin Seligman also said that he didn't want it to be coined as kind of happyology, because well-being and happiness are not the same thing. You might suggest that happiness could be a moment in time. It can be fleeting. It can come and go throughout life and what we're experiencing. But well-being suggests that we can be resilient, and even when the tough times roll around, that we're able to kind of cope and manage. So happiness is an aspect of well-being, but it's not the only thing about it. So, what determines happiness? Okay, so what determines happiness? And this was some research by Sonia Lyubomirsky, and she has a really good book, The How of Happiness. And the research suggests, and these numbers fluctuate, so they're not completely set in stone, but that when it comes to 50% is genetically determined. Okay, so 50% of how happy we are. So even in this group now, some of us in this very moment and in life in generally will be probably more happy at times than the rest. And 50% of that is thought to be predetermined. So how we're kind of hardwired. 10% is determined by our circumstances. Okay, so this could be, and again, this fluctuates between 10, 12, 18 in some studies, but generally it's between 10 and 18. So this is possibly, you know, when we start thinking things like, oh, I'll be happy when I buy the house. I'll be happy when I have more money. I'll be happy when I'm in a relationship. And very often we put a lot of weight on circumstantial things to make us happy. But what the research suggests is actually, once we achieve that particular goal or our circumstances change, we almost kind of become used to that. And then our happiness level kind of almost goes back to baseline. Then 40% of our happiness is controlled by our thoughts, actions, and behaviors. So this, in a way, is what we're really kind of focusing on in positive psychology, is this 40% that is malleable and that we can change. And, you know, talking about this idea of our perspective and our attitudes and how we can choose to look at things, this for me is really how this idea of kind of positive psychology and the tools that it offers ties into this idea of transformative. Because if we know that we do have kind of control over this aspect of our happiness, how can we then choose to see things differently? How can we choose to become aware of not only the positive aspects of life, but also hold a space with the negative aspects of life? Recognizing that they both need to coexist in any life. How can we take on board, as I said, that life it will be both positive and negative, and still be able to kind of harness that perspective to be able to take on board kind of resilience, grit, to be able to show up even when things are hard. So, before I kind of show the next slide, part of them, and it's already been said a little bit earlier on, part of this idea of when happier people were studied, they found that generally people who were happier in life achieved more success. Generally, they were more optimistic. And what they found was when they studied those people, that generally they played to their strengths, if you like. Whether that was consciously or unconsciously, they either knew what they were really good at and probably what they were not so good at, but they drew on those things that they enjoyed and were good at and kind of put that at the forefront of their experience. So what Seligman and co. did was they created these via character strengths. Anyone heard of these via character strengths? You may have come across work, or there's another one, kind of Gallup, that's more tied to kind of corporations. But generally, I have this website, as you can see here. You can literally go on and take that test. And what it does is there's 24 of these character strengths, and they're grouped under these different headings: wisdom, courage, humanity, transcendence, justice, and moderation. And it's like a series of questions. It takes maybe about 10 minutes to complete. And once you complete those questions, you will get a rundown from 1 to 24 of your character strengths. And what the theory suggests is that if you know what your top strengths are, even if you're doing something that you don't like, so let's say you're not really happy in work, what's a means to an end, you know, you need to do it to pay the bills for the next so many years. If you can choose a character strength, so just say kindness is one of my top character strengths, and let's say I'm in a job that I really dislike, what I can do is, if I know that that's my strength, I can choose each day to complete random acts of kindness, or to make sure that I'm consciously kind to 3 people in the day. And therefore, even if the environment, the outside environment, is not ideal for me, by leading with that strength, that will lead to positive outcomes. Any thoughts or questions? Oh, you look like you're pensive there. Is that a question? No? Okay. So one of the kind of theories of well-being that Seligman proposed was the PERMA model. Okay. So as I said, what he really says again and again is that happiness is not positive psychology, but it's an aspect of it. And he said there were 5 pillars of well-being. And those were positive emotion, engagement, relationships, and accomplishment. And in his book, he had a book 2011 or 12 called Flourishing, and he kind of put forth this new theory of well-being. In more recent years, you might see the PERMA H model. And that was because a lot of critics said that the H, because health is a massive component of well-being, so physical health, physical exercise. So you'll either see that model with PERMA or PERMA H. And as I said, so we've positive emotions. And positive emotions is checking in with what emotions do you experience on a day-to-day basis. And again, you know, all emotions are valid and they're part of the human experience, but if we think of enjoyable emotions, we might say joy, comfort, curiosity, connection, love, all of those kind of emotions that we enjoy. How do we create more of those in our experience? Then we have engagement. And engagement is about being engaged with life, finding flow. Okay. So some of you may have heard of, anyone read the book Flow? Yeah, so Csikszentmihalyi high. Hopefully I've been years trying to pronounce that correctly, so I think I'm down at this stage. So he spoke about this idea of flow, and flow is almost kind of being at one with the music, or being so engrossed in something that time almost stands still. And that can be quite different for each of us. I know I get into flow when I have deep conversations, or when I'm reading a really good book, but it could be for someone else when they're running or playing a musical instrument. But it basically is when almost time passes without us realizing it. So in this PERMA model, put this idea of well-being, that we should have things in our life that engagement with life and help us kind of slip into flow. Then we have positive relationships. So as humans, we are social animals. So connection and relationships are very, very important to us. As much as, you know, it's great to be an individual and have independent time as well, but we do need connection and positive relationships. So again, it could be just asking the question, you know, what are your most fulfilling relationships in your life? What do those relationships give you? We might also, underneath that kind of idea of positive relationships, really focus on actually what relationships in my life are not so positive. Are there relationships where I need to set boundaries, or maybe kind of take a little step back and maybe not spend as much time with that particular person? So positive relations are a massive aspect of this theory of well-being. And then we have meaning. Again, as humans, making meaning of our lives is quite important. So if we think about, you know, kind of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, of course, we need those basic needs met, hunger, shelter, etc. But after that, we, you know, as we move up that pyramid, meaning is quite important. And it doesn't have to be this kind of massive meaning like we're changing the world. We could get meaning in, usually it's kind of wanting to be part bigger, but we could find meaning in donating clothes to charity when we're doing a clear out. Or it could be in our kind of religion or kind of spiritual practice we might find meaning in. Being a parent, being in relationship to family or someone else. It could be in our work, in volunteering. So again, all of this is very subjective because it's how we experience it. And then we have accomplishment or achievement. So again, as humans, we are these kind of goal-orientated species. So it's quite important for us not only to set goals, but to achieve those goals. It could be something as simple as having daily goals like walking or running every day, making your bed, little small goals. And then also could be bigger goals like running a marathon or passing a particular exam. So it's not, as I said, they can be small and big, but the important thing is to not only create the goals, but to achieve them. And as I said, then the more recent hate on, that's about kind of our physical health and how that impacts the overall well-being. So I've been talking for quite a lot. So we are going to go into a breakout room in just a few minutes for you to practice playing around with this PERMA model. But for now, I just want to check in to see what's coming up for you as you look at this theory of well-being.
There's something coming up for me about where people come to sort of, I don't know if it's the right acceptance or is there a lot here about how I want to be, you know, all these things I can do to be better, as if I can do these little steps here and little steps here and and there's something around that being a massive task. And you said about coming to it with steps, but something around acceptance. I think about people I know who, some are massive achievers and some achieve in very different ways, different scales of earnings, different scales of life, success, and so on. And some are naturally happy and some are, you know, not happy with everything, and others are happy with very little. And that 40% thoughts, actions, and behaviors, I don't know, it's just that there's an interesting sort of mix of stuff going on there, and I'm not sure if there's a question there other than just noticing something, wondering what your thoughts might be.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think, you know, going back to this idea of the kind of determinants of happiness, I imagine we all know people who kind of naturally have a sunny disposition. And on the flip side of that, probably we all know half glass, half empty people that regardless of what's going on, they kind of might see the negative of it. So that can be a thing. But as you said, what can we do with that 40%? And it's not necessarily about saying that we need to have these big, massive achievements or be unhappy with where we are. it's just recognizing. I would almost offer that it's about awareness and perspective, because that is where our power lies. Like Viktor Frankl even said in his Man's Search for Meaning, that the power, the most powerful thing we have is the power to choose what we think about or what we focus on. So I might accept that I'm earning a certain amount of money and I want to earn all of this. It doesn't mean that I have to be dissatisfied, but I can just notice that, and with that awareness, I can choose how to think about that particular thing or what might I want to do differently. Michelle.
Hi. I think that for me, the important thing to bring into all of this is that it is subjective, it's individual. Everybody is different. If we start comparing and looking at other people and how come they're happy, I'm in the same situation and I'm not happy, or whatever it is, it's just so subjective. And it's really just about tuning into that person and to their own reality and their own experience. And I think I really like all of this, because I think it's not a case of ignoring anything else, but actually when you focus on these things, it actually gives you a point of action as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, absolutely, because it is so subjective. And I think as well with this model, there's no kind of measure point or any place that we should be or shouldn't be. It basically is just a tool to explore. Yeah, thanks, Michelle. Kate?
Hi, I was just really surprised the 50% that's predetermined. How has that come about? How's it been, I don't know, found that's the case?
So they literally did studies on, like, I think it was 2,000 people, and yeah, over the course of time, generally they felt that was kind of the set mark, that there was no kind of changing in that 50%, and so it was decided. Again, it's a little bit fluid. It's not exactly 50% across the board, but basically they found, kind of like we're saying, in that half glass full, half glass empty, to use that analogy or metaphor, that there will be kind of a baseline that doesn't really over time, regardless of circumstances, but that there is kind of that malleable 40% that could change over time.
And how would that fit in with the sort of nature nurture debate, in terms of whether you're actually born inherently with your glass half full or half empty, or from a child all the time, if it's around your, that sort of negativity, how much you're taking from there? Yeah,
it's exactly like the nature nurture debate. So it ties in really nicely with the research, where there is that element of some of it will be nature and some of it will be, as I said here, the environment that you're in.
And is the environment the other 40%, or is that within that 50%?
Environment is only 10%.
It's not in fact that we bad today, isn't it?
Yeah, everyone to check if you're
not in fact that we
if you're not, just so it doesn't disturb. So between 10 and 18% is the environment. So you might say that the environment and the 40% that's malleable is the nurture, if we were to kind of really try and tie it into the nature nurture. And the nature then is the 50% that's kind of hardwired.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. And again, it's like what all of these kind of positive psychology interventions and are researched and studied, but like all of the things, even with coaching, it's an offering. It's a way to explore, but nothing, it doesn't mean that it can't be disproven, and there's plenty of research that kind of might critique and argue with that. But in terms of the research, that's Sonia.
It's just really interesting, because I think, it does appear sometimes people find things so much easier than others to be positive. And it's interesting to say that 50% of that is actually hardwired into people.
Yeah. But there was also this, before he even coined the term positive psychology, Seligman talked about this thing called learned helplessness. And I think that's what initially kind of got his juices flowing on this, was that actually what can happen is, I know even someone I know really well, and that they often think about things really negatively. And if I offer a different perspective, they'll say, oh, I can't think positively. That's just the way I am. So there's this idea that we can have this all learned helplessness. And then Seligman also believe we could also have learned optimism. But yes, I remember seeing that pie chart and being really shocked as well the first time I saw it. And even within that 40% that relates to attitudes and thoughts, the research in Seligman believes that even within that, it's probably only 10 to 12% that we can really have a massive influence over. Generally, it's only the shift happens about 10 to 12%, not even kind of generally 40% all of the time. Yeah. Thanks, Kate. Carmine?
Yes, no, just wanted to share in the opposite way. Talked about positive psychology, and people think, I'm not, I'm not positive. I think, and I think there is behind also the negative thoughts, there is some kind of positive for them result, like they're trying to, in some twisted way, they found how being negative for them is a positive. They achieve something positive for. So like maybe they're looking for, I don't know, by complaining, they're looking for contact in this way, and they actually achieve that, and they grow into a community. I'm Italian, so complaining is like, a national thinking. And if you don't do that, then they will look at you, you're too positive. Like, as though, yes, like society as well is like, when they talk about positive psychology, it's like, need to consider that. And I just wanted to say, sometimes I also provoke, like, what might be the positive result out of a negative thought. So what is behind this? Because I truly believe that sometimes when we do have negative thoughts, when we dwell too much in negative thoughts, you have really the bad result of feeling bad. And I know that personally, because I've been into burning out, and that's what, because I was too much judging or in a negative way, But as we know, judging can be a positive thinking. So how I use those qualities and the negative feeling or thought, it can twist straight away in another context and become a positive aspect. That's what I noticed by myself.
I think that's a great point that you make, and it brings to mind actually a point that I wanted to make, which is that as humans, research suggests that we have a natural negative bias, all of us, and it's believed, in terms of evolution, that it happened way back when we needed to survive, when we were out hunting and gathering and had animals possibly chasing us. So we naturally will need to look for danger in our environments to survive. So naturally, very often we'll have negative biases. So, and I think it's really important to not it's not that we're shaming anyone or saying, oh, you shouldn't think negative, or that we're that person that hops in every time and says, just think positive about things, because number one, it'd be really annoying. And as you said, it doesn't take into account what could be going on. Carmine, as is it a learned helplessness? Is this person meeting a need by being negative? Or are they just completely unconscious of the fact that they can think a different way? And I think even with this model, that's what I really like about it in its simplicity. It's not saying, oh, just be positive. It's helping the person break down the aspects of well-being and to figure out, as I said, is it positive emotions? Maybe I'm not experiencing a lot of positive emotions. What might I do in my life? What brings me joy? And how might I add more of that in there? In terms of engagement, by asking myself that question, I might think, actually, I'm not engaged really in my work. I'm not engaged in my relationships. What do I need to do to bring myself into presence? Or could I pick up a hobby that would maybe help with being more engaged in life? Or will I be more present with the people I'm with in the moment and not be on my mobile phone? So with this, it just helps us to be aware of where the baseline is, where I generally am in this moment, let's say in a coaching session. Plus, it also helps me to unpick or to come up with ways that I might, in each of these kind of pillars, that I might be able to add to my well-being. Yeah, thanks, Carmine. Jenny?
Hi. Well, firstly, just to say I'm loving all of this because it sort of really crosses over with an interest I've got around social prescribing, which is all about well-being and helping people to sort of live better lives without pills and medication and what have you. And it's a real strong link into coaching. But the point I just wanted to make, it's not really a question. It was just sort of coming up for me around the role of expectation and sort of the people you and your environment, I guess. So I remember seeing a definition around loneliness and what it is, and it was something which said, it's kind of the difference between where you are and where you think you should be in terms of the strength of your relationship. So there's a lot there about what's your expectation on each of these dimensions around where you think you should be and where you are. And I think that's so shaped by the friends we might have, or the people we might come into contact with work. If we work in a very corporate, high-performing team, and everybody is doing this, that, and the other, and your perception is then that actually you don't have, there's a big gap between where you are and where other people are. I think that just plays a really big role, and it really reinforces what somebody was saying earlier about how subjective it is to each individual, because your reality is very different from others depending on your environment and your upbringing and people that you're surrounded by. So this is all really super interesting. Anyway, thank you.
Any great point. And yeah, what came to mind when you were sharing that is also this social media age that we live in.
Yeah.
That can often make us want to compare our lives. I should be doing this, or this person has this particular thing. So absolutely. And that's why, again, coming back to this, that we can, if we were to use this in a coaching session or just with ourselves, hold this as a framework to explore, it could be, well, what would that look like if you were fully engaged, or what would your relationships look like? And even in asking those questions, I might have an insight, well, actually, I do have really good relationships. Why am I feeling not fulfilled in this area? Is it because I'm comparing myself to somebody on Instagram, or is it because I feel I should be something? So again, with this, it can just really kind of elicit those insights for ourselves and a coaching context if we're using it in that context. So what I'm going to suggest is that you have a little play around with this. So we're going to go into breakout rooms in just a minute. And I know a lot of you in this space are coaches, so you'll be very aware of what an open question is. But I just have kind of put some ideas as to questions you might ask under each heading. And what you're going to do is I'm going to pop you into pairs, and you'll have about 20 minutes with about 5 minutes feedback. So literally just 10 minutes, a very brief each way. And I would like person A to ask person B, let's say, questions. So you're going to use this framework of PERMA and just, like I have here, what extent do you currently experience positive emotions? What activities give you pleasure? Don't feel you have to stick to this script. This is just a guideline for those of you who wish to use it. Be free with it for those of you who already coach. Whatever intuitive questions come to mind, work with whatever emerges in the space. But you literally just have 10 minutes. After the 10 minutes, you'll swap over, and person B will ask person A the questions around the PERMA model. And then at the end, you'll have about 5 minutes just to give each other feedback as to what came up for you in that process. While I get the breakout rooms ready, is there any questions on this exercise?
Can I just ask Lilian, just to clarify, are we managing the time ourselves? So we do 10 minutes or 10 minutes each and then 5?
So what I will do is I'm going to put a timer on the room for 25 minutes, but in your pair, you will manage the time. So after the first 10 minutes, swap over, second 10 minutes, pause, and then come back together, and you'll have just 5 minutes to talk through how you found the exercise. So let me... And as luck would have it, I think we have exact pairs. So it'll be 25 minutes, and then we'll come back as a group and just share your learnings from the exercise. And if you need help at any point in any of your room, there should be a help button, and I can pop in and explain anything. But enjoy the exercise, and I'll see you back here in 25 minutes. I can see some smiley faces in place. Trying to read expressions, a mixture. So it'd be lovely to hear how you experienced what came up for you in those breakout rooms.
I think for me, oh, sorry, did I just butt in?
So we got, okay, Fiona, seems you started, go ahead. And then
I was going to put my hand up, but I'm on my phone. I don't know where to find that.
Fine.
I was just, do you know, it's exactly the reason why I came on this today, because it just reminds me of how much, like myself, and I'm sure lots of other people do discount, you know, the positive things that are in our lives, and you know, the joy that we get from things, and often just not actually sitting down to even think about it. Yeah, so it's been, honestly, I thought it was really, really powerful, and it's something actually that I found a bit sticky in my coaching, because it's always been for me the positive that I found the most difficult to explore with my clients, in terms of not wanting to be that, you know, person that says, oh, well, you know, what makes you happy in your life? Or, you know, when they're in that kind of state where they just can't see anything. But yeah, today, I think just doing that exercise really makes me realise that actually there is a way that you can ask these things without, you know, trying to push positivity down their throats. And actually, I'm sure that by doing this in sessions, that the majority of people would come away and feel actually quite upbeat and happy about, you know, the good things that are in their lives.
Brilliant. Thanks for sharing that, Fiona. Thank you. Michelle?
Yeah, I just think it's really nice to have the opportunity to do that thinking, because I can't remember the last time I did it for myself. So that was really lovely. And also just, I found that, you know, just by sharing it, the clarity that comes with it, actually, it seemed to crystallize a few things for me.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. So clarity and kind of crystallization. Emma?
Hi, Lilian. Thanks so much for this session. I was really struck when you went through the pillars of how connected they were to the things that we were discussing in the emotional resilience session this morning. And as we went through them together, myself and Claire, I realized, not only they made me feel better, it made me feel better to actually talk about the good things in my life and to remember them, but also it helped me to identify what my resources were, you know, what my strong, powerful things already in my life that could help in difficult times.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Emma, for sharing that. I think it's such an important reminder, and it really does tie into the fact that this isn't about Pollyanna syndrome and being happy all the time. Well-being is recognizing that curveballs are going to come along the road and twists and turns in life, but actually in that moment, how can I draw on my resilience? What tools do I have to help me cope with the situation at hand, even when life gets tough? Or when life is tough, how can I, even in the toughest moments, generally there's always something that I can be grateful for. Generally, no matter how bad it's going, something may be going right. So yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that, Claire.
Hello. Yeah, I just wanted to ask, using that PERMA model, can you also identify where that some of those areas maybe are lacking, and then use that to work on a kind of a plan moving forwards with people. I was just thinking about using this with some individuals that I know of who are having really tough times. Obviously, you don't want to undermine how tough those times are for them, but at the same time, try and, like Emma was just saying, pull them out to focus on the things that are within their control and the resources they can pull on. But is it one where you would also look at those areas that are lacking and then put plans in place around that?
Yeah, absolutely, Claire. So I would say with this, it's a framework. So you could just take that framework and use it in any way which might serve your client. So that could be recognizing that there's tough times, or it doesn't necessarily have to be used in this frame of let's make everything merry and positive. It could literally be used as a tool for awareness.
Yeah. Okay.
It's already been shared, Michelle. Sometimes we don't actually sit down, or our clients might not have the space to focus in on those pillars of well-being. Or, as you shared, Fiona, we often think as coaches, or even if it's with a family member or friend, that we almost diminish their experience by saying, just look on the bright side, just be happy about it. You know, so many people have it worse off than you, and that's not what we're trying to do. And I think this framework really helps us to break down those components of well-being, and just, even if it's just a tool for an awareness that this is where I feel I am now.
Yeah.
Because I could, if I'm with a client and I'm talking about positive emotions, and my client shares, I don't feel positive about anything, life is miserable, all of these things are happening to me, I have no control. The awareness that actually I just feel in this very stuck place, we could just ask the question, what would you like to have happen? What might change if you were to draw on a positive emotion? What would that positive emotion look like? What would need to happen in your external environment for that emotion to be triggered? So we can just start asking questions to kind of bring awareness. And, you know, I think that is what's really key. I kind of named this talk the power of perspective. And I think that's what's really, for me anyway, it's really important that this is about just offering a different perspective. It's not about saying you should think positive or you should think negative or anything in between. It's recognizing that life is generally 50-50, not exactly in that ratio, but life is good and it's bad in equal measure a lot of the time. So it's being able to hold a space to help our clients become aware of that thinking. Okay, so regardless of what the thinking is, as coaches, I think at our best we can offer that space for our clients to unpick their paradigm or unpick their thinking. And in doing so, it creates awareness. And it's always up to our clients what they do with that awareness. Because if you think of something like grieving, or maybe someone has been through a relationship breakup, maybe it's necessary for them to feel negative emotions in that particular period of time in life. So I might sit with it and say, actually, I'm not feeling a lot of positive emotions at the moment, but the reason for that is I'm going through this particular thing. So as I said, it's never that we're trying to push or shove the needle in any direction, but with that awareness, as I said, we can still recognize, well, even in this, what I deem to be bad experience or bad moments in life, how can I focus on those pillars of well-being? And is there any area that I might be able to improve in order to help with that overall well-being? Any other thoughts? So thinking about that idea of perspective and how kind of, was it Wayne Dyer that said, when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. So there are exercises called positive psychology interventions, and they're all evidence-based, scientifically backed interventions. A lot of them really, really simple to do and can be done anywhere. And these particular exercises, I've kind of pulled out 3 of them just to explain quite briefly before we wrap up today. One of them is called 3 Good Things, Best Possible Self, and a Gratitude Letter. I'm going to share, it's kind of a link, so you can download them using this link. And also if you want to stay in touch, we can do it through that way. Hopefully everyone should be able to. So this is just the 3 of them in more depth. I'll explain them anyway, but just in case you want to have a copy, I'll just ask you for your email and I can email them to you. And basically 3 Good Things is where just before you settle in for the evening, that you look back over your day, and you might even decide to close your eyes and just kind of really get present. and you just look back over your day and you think of 3 things that went well. They don't have to be big, amazing thing like you got married that day or just gave birth to your firstborn child. It doesn't have to be anything major like that. It could literally be, I had a really nice, nutritious lunch. Someone smiled at me on the way to work and it made me feel warm. I caught up with an old friend on the phone. It could be the simplest thing to the biggest thing. And you just really, for 2 or 3 minutes, focus in on that feeling of that good thing. And then you have a little journal and you literally just write down the good thing and why it felt good to you. And the science shows that if you do that over a period of 6 weeks, that you naturally almost kind of see more things to be positive about, and it has very positive outcomes for you. And the second one that you can do is a best possible self exercise. And the idea of that is, again, you sit down, you can get really present, close your eyes again if you like. And at this point, then you focus on your best, you in your best possible future. And it could be 6 months from now, 6 years from now, but you really want to imagine who's there, what are you doing, what does that feel like? And you really want to get in touch using all your senses, really get in touch with that image of yourself, that visualization of yourself in the future. And then again, after a few minutes of really being in touch with it, you write down in the present tense that best self future. So I am a best-selling author. I'm having amazing and interesting conversations with like-minded people. Whatever it is for you, you literally write down for a few minutes or as much as you want about that best possible self. I've done this in workshops actually where there's a game. I think I read it first in Jack Canfield, one of Jack Canfield's books. He's the chicken soup for the soul, if you're aware of Jack Canfield. And he talked about this idea of going to a party where it was a come as you are. Come as you are, come as you will be kind of a party. But it's basically people would come and they would talk about themselves in this kind of future self. So you would walk around the party as if you're living your best possible life in that moment, and you would talk to the other people at the party. And it had this really kind of powerful impact. I'm not suggesting you have to go to one of those parties or create one, but even the exercise in itself can be a really powerful exercise. And it kind of boosts mood and boosts levels of optimism. And again, that can kind of be for a prolonged period of time. It's not necessarily that you're kind of writing out all these fantasies. So you're not going to write that you're married to Beyonce or George Clooney. I know they're already taken. So it's not necessarily this kind of maybe far-fetched fantasy, but it's really who you believe your best self to be. And then the third one is called a gratitude letter. So these are just three examples of PPIs. A gratitude letter is where you sit and think about someone who's had a positive impact on your life, or someone may have done something for you, or an act of kindness, and you write them a thank you letter. And in the sheet, I've written down some things that you might think about. But basically, you write the letter, and the research shows that it is it probably is tenfold if you actually deliver to that person or give it to them. But even without giving it to them, even if you never share the letter with anybody, just the act of actually writing that thank you letter again leads to positive outcomes. So they're just 3 examples of PPIs. There are many more. Anyone, I know we're kind of coming into the last 8 minutes of our workshop today. I just want to leave some space to see if there are any thoughts, questions, reflections before we wrap up today. Okay, some people are logging off. Can you see how you might use this idea of the PERMA model, positive psychology, again, to be able to possibly offer yourself or your clients a different perspective, and in so doing, tie into this idea of this transformative coaching lens? PERMA model, great, thanks, Jenny. So as I said, if any of you have sent your emails, I will also kind of send on some recommended books if that would be useful for anyone who is interested in doing a deeper dive, and also some websites. So the Via Character Strength, that's a free tool. So if you do want to do that character strength, you can, it only, as I said, takes about 10 minutes and it gives you that list. You could offer it to clients, do it on yourselves. And there's also some other websites that offer a bigger array of those kind of positive psychology interventions. So thanks for being here. Hopefully you have a different perspective on how positive psychology can be used with and alongside coaching. For me, I think it really, really complements coaching. And as I said, I'll stay on for another few minutes if anyone has questions, but if not, thank you all for being here and I hope you enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Lilian.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Email.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it. I know maybe we weren't as responsive. I was very conscious of those moments where you ask something of us all. And that can be difficult to listen back and it's a bit quiet. But actually, I think there was a lot in the sessions where we were talking to someone and listening to what you're saying. Personally, I took an awful lot from it. And actually, there's some good insights for myself there as well and how I go forward. So just wanted to say thank you. Just appreciate it.
Appreciate that feedback. Thank you.
All right, no problem. Bye for now.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lilian. How do I know that I've given you my email to get the links? I did go onto the website and
did you pop in your email? Let me just stop.